Hey y'all, it's me, Tree. So today we are starting with resonance, loss, and then we have dilemma. So with resonance, I'm getting there is something here that is connecting with y'all on a deeper level. Something in your external experience is beginning to match something y'all have already been carrying internally. And then we arrive at loss. And this is an energy of losing your sense of direction. So I'm getting there can be uncertainty here. There could be confusion. Y'all could be reassessing y'all's life and needing to reconnect with y'all's own internal guidance. And then we have dilemma. So I'm getting there is some kind of difficult position or choice being presented here. And I'm getting something may not necessarily have a simple answer. So I'm getting something is beginning to resonate pretty strongly with the collective. But there is also some uncertainty around exactly what y'all are supposed to do with it. Now let's get into this message. We're starting under this tone of resonance, and the tarot brings in the autumnal equinox, the full moon, and the Queen of Coins reversed. So this autumnal equinox says prepare for change. This card talks about making long-term plans. It talks about timing that can extend over a period of months. And most importantly here, this card talks about harvest. So I'm getting something was put on a long-term timing scale. And whatever this is, I don't get that y'all expected this to happen overnight. There has been some kind of longer process playing itself out in the background, I'm getting. And something about that process I'm also getting is reaching harvest now. And that is what y'all are feeling with resonance. Something that y'all have wanted to see take place is beginning to enter the energy fields. And under that, we have the full moon. This is illuminated subconscious. So this card talks about emotional awareness. It talks about a climax. It talks about moving on and completing a cycle. So I'm getting this harvest that is appearing to bring an emotional climax and a real ending. Something is reaching the point where it can finally complete now. And I'm getting that the collective, y'all can feel this. Y'all may not necessarily have every physical piece of evidence sitting directly in front of y'all just yet, but I am getting that something about this ending is already resonating with y'all. There is a sense of, I know something has shifted. I know something here is reaching its conclusion. And then we have the Queen of Coins reversed. This says, tending to yourself. So I feel like this Queen, this is the collective. Because I'm getting, while this entire situation has been playing itself out, y'all have been tending to y'all's selves. Y'all have had your own life to take care of. That's y'all's home, y'all's work, y'all's finances, y'all's responsibilities, y'all's own stability. So instead of making your entire existence about waiting for this situation to reach its conclusion, y'all tended to what was actually yours to tend to. So this first column is pretty straightforward, I would say. Something that was placed on a long-term timeline is finally coming to harvest. And that brings an emotional climax. It brings a cycle completion. And it brings an ending that y'all have wanted to see take place for a very long time. And because y'all have been tending to y'all selves while this situation unfolded, I'm getting that there is something particularly powerful about finally feeling this shift enter y'all's field. But then we move over to this lost emotion. And this is where I feel like we are being given some of the backstory behind exactly what y'all are resonating with. The tarot gives me the Page of Wands reversed, the Hierophant, the Ten of Cups reversed. So starting with this Page of Wands reversed, this says, lack self-confidence. And I'm going to say this page, he can be hasty. He is self-limiting, pessimistic. There can be a lack of confidence here, or an energy that eventually has to be redirected altogether and has to find another path. But I think it's important to see what this page is coming up against, because directly under the page we have the Hierophant. It says religious traditions. So this card, this talks about rulers and leaders. It talks about right and wrong. It talks about programming, conforming, convention. It talks about marriage, and it talks about values. So I'm getting that there was a powerful established structure here. And specifically for some of y'all, I think we're talking about a marriage and a family structure, because this was something that had roots. It had a foundation. There were real values attached to it. There was a moral framework attached to it. And there was an understanding of what was right and what was wrong. I'm getting that there were also expectations around what somebody was supposed to do when they agreed to participate in this structure. But coming back to this Page of Wands energy, I'm getting something about this page did not hold up against the structure it was participating in, because underneath the Hierophant we have the Ten of Cups reversed, and this is a disconnected family. So this card brings in imbalance. broken, discord, inauthentic relationships, a false sense of security, and misalliance. So I'm getting whatever happened through this Page of Wands energy, that ultimately dismantled the family structure that existed inside this Hierophant. This was something that was supposed to be built around commitment, values, morality. Marriage and family. And I'm getting that all of that was broken apart. And I think this is important because now this loss is making a lot more sense. Y'all didn't just lose a person here. Y'all didn't just lose a relationship here. For some of y'all, an entire structure was dismantled. And I just have to say, when something that significant falls apart, especially something that had become part of the framework through which y'all understood your own life to be, y'all don't necessarily walk away from that immediately knowing where y'all are going next. Y'all have to reassess. Y'all have to reconnect with your own guidance system. You have to figure out what y'all actually want now that the structure y'all thought you were building your life inside of no longer exists. And I think that is the history sitting underneath this resonance that we started with. I'm getting something connected to that old dismantling has been on a much longer timeline. And now, finally, something about it is reaching its harvest. But here's where this message gets really interesting, because our final oracle card here is Dilemma. And underneath Dilemma, the tarot is bringing the message home with the Sun reversed, the Six of Coins, and the Devil reversed. So, with the Sun reversed, this says just have fun. And this card talks about counting your blessings. It says to play. It talks about your authentic self, and it gives y'all a permission slip. It speaks of optimism, and it is a yes card. But underneath that, we have the Six of Coins, which this says giving and receiving. And this is about generosity. It's about balance, kindness, accepting, equal give and take. It's about care, and it's about being valued. So together, this Sun reverse and this Six of Coins, this is beautiful energy. And I actually think this is the energy that the collective is in right now. Y'all have done enough work on yourselves that you are showing up differently. You're more authentic. You're allowing yourselves to experience joy again. You're giving from a healthier place. And I'm getting y'all understand reciprocity differently now. You understand what it means to be valued. And you understand that healthy relationships require equal give and take. But, like we said, there's a dilemma. And I think the dilemma is coming on this very last card. Because underneath all of this beautiful energy, we have the devil reversed. And this says unhealthy patterns. So this card talks about toxic dynamics, codependency, negative karmic connections. This card talks about physical or emotional abuse, and it talks about unhealthy attachment. So what I'm getting here is that y'all have been running into a very specific problem, because when y'all are standing in this sun reverse and this 6 of coins energy, and then you encounter somebody who appears to be reflecting that same energy back to y'all, and I'm saying that can feel intense, right? Because meeting somebody who is mirroring you exactly, that'll make you think, damn, you get it. You appear authentic. You're meeting me equally. You're giving back what I'm giving. So you tell yourself, there is generosity here. There is care here. There is reciprocity here. You tell yourself that this feels different. And this is where discernment gets difficult. Because I'm just going to say, discernment, that's pretty easy when somebody walks through the door looking like the devil, isn't it? But on the other hand, I'm getting that it's not so easy when a person comes in and they don't look like the devil. Because I'm getting that these situations can initially present as this sun and 6 of coins. They can mirror the energy y'all are already carrying, because mirroring somebody's energy that's a pretty easy thing to do for somebody who is operating on lower vibrations. But like I said, when somebody is mirroring you, the resonance that can feel incredibly real. But somewhere underneath the encounter, y'all eventually discover an unhealthy pattern, and that's exactly where the dilemma comes in. Because I'm getting, y'all already know what you won't accept. That's actually not the confusing part anymore, is it? Y'all already lived through a structure where unhealthy patterns had consequences significant enough to dismantle a marriage and a family. So I'm getting y'all are not going back into that mess. So the dilemma is not, do I accept the unhealthy pattern? No, we know you're not going to do that. But the dilemma is, how do I move forward when something can initially look healthy, feel reciprocal, it mirrors the energy I'm carrying, and still eventually reveal an underlying pattern that I am no longer willing to participate in. And that, I'm going to say, that is a much harder exercise in discernment, because sometimes there is genuine resonance. Sometimes there is genuine reciprocity. Sometimes somebody really can meet parts of y'all, and there can still be something underneath that connection that makes it incompatible with the life that y'all are building. So I want to say that these things, they very much can exist at the same exact time. And I think that's where some of y'all have been feeling lost. Not because y'all don't know yourselves, no. And it's not because y'all don't know what y'all want. And it is definitely not because y'all don't know what you won't accept. Because I'm getting, y'all know all of those things now. But the difficulty that y'all are having is figuring out how to navigate new encounters when unhealthy patterns don't always announce themselves immediately. Because sometimes they show up underneath something that initially feels incredibly aligned. And maybe that is part of what this harvest is really bringing y'all. Because the old family structure, well, that taught y'all what happens when unhealthy patterns are allowed to exist inside something that is supposed to be built on values. And now, you're catching them earlier. You're recognizing them in different forms. And you're no longer willing to sacrifice y'all's selves just because something initially felt good. So yes, I'm getting y'all may still be figuring out exactly what moving forward looks like for y'all. But there is a major difference between who y'all were inside that old structure and who y'all are now. Y'all don't need the entire path mapped out in order to know when something is not y'all's path. And that's where I'm just going to say, collective, when y'all find yourselves in a pattern where everything seems like it's exactly what y'all wanted it to be, do yourself a favor. Lean in and pay attention to your body. Because if y'all's body feels charged, whether that charge feels good or whether that charge feels bad, that charge is something that y'all definitely want to notice. Because what that charge is telling y'all is that your body recognizes the dynamic. And we all know your body tends to recognize things like dynamics first. And that's not saying y'all need to fully commit to whatever y'all might be feeling. And it doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. But it does mean y'all should pay attention. It means y'all should slow down enough to use y'all's discernment. And then allow whatever is underneath that charge to reveal itself all on its own. Just hold back. And that little trick, collective, that little trick will get you further down your path than you might think it will. And that's the message that I have for y'all today. So if this one landed, then like my message. If you made it to the end, then leave me a comment and let me know. And remember, where there is love, there's light. I'll see you all again real soon.